Do I go now?
Yeah.
This is on brand for how this day has been.
It's an absolute peach from the Paraguayan Miguel Almiron.
Cross it in, looking for Garza, backside and in for the first goal in Atlanta United history from Yamil Assad. Take a look at history. Hey everybody, thanks for downloading Five Stripe Final again on Dirty South Soccer Podcast Network. Just wanted to take a quick second before we get the episode started to let you guys know yet again that this episode has been brought to you guys by Lucid FC. If you haven't heard yet, Lucid FC is bringing all of the Five Stripe Final episodes here to you this year, and they've been a great partner for us. I was able to meet the guys who run this company. It's Lucid FC stands for footwear and clothing. They're a clothing brand, kind of a British modern style, and it's really cool clothes. They actually gave me some when I went to go down to meet them, and I actually was just wearing one of the parkas that they sell today. I wore it down to work, and it was great because it was awesome, and it made me look cool too. It's honestly it's kind of sad that I'm a full-grown adult and these clothes are like the most fashionable things that I own. But anyway, so I would recommend anybody go out and get them. You can check them out at lucidfc.us or lucidfc.co.uk and check them out. They've got all kinds of stuff, pants to parkas to pretty much everything in between. So you can wear it to the soccer game, or you can wear it to a club or something, or out to a restaurant or dinner. So versatile stuff, and again, highly recommend it. And I thank them for bringing this episode to you. So without further ado, let's get right into it.
Five-Star Final, Jason Jones here from the Mothership in Dirty South Soccer. Joe Patrick from 92.9 The Game, Dirty South Soccer, and the Mothership sometimes as well is over there. Joe, it's been a day. Let's look at this day.
I'm
actually.
loopy.
Let's take a look back at this day. Let's go back in time to a simpler time, to a more kinder and more sunshiny world, where we were sitting there minding our own business, making fun of Emerson Hyndman.
Man, that is true. That is what was happening this morning. It was such a normal Tuesday.
It was a day like any other.
It was so normal until like 11 p.m. or 11 a.m. It was like, I had just like done a little Hyndman post talking about where he fits in the midfield because I didn't think we were going to have any content for today. That is honestly, seriously, why I wrote that post. I was like, shoot, well, we better get something up on the website because I don't know what else is going to go on today. The teams in Florida, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. And then Rob Usry started talking about how Hyndman is a Nagby. He's Nagby and Barco in one elf-like package. And then we started talking about how he does kind of look like an elf, doesn't he?
He is very slight. Yes.
He just needs a little bit. If he had the pointy ears, that's all he's missing, really.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's such an innocent conversation before the carnage that follows with a Goff bomb. We'll call it, I guess. Stephen Goff breaks the story first of Julian Gressel being traded in exchange for money.
Hold on. Have you ever seen like historical like recreations of like Chernobyl or like some really devastating act of war or something, and it's like showing the people in their house and they're just going about their day and minding their own business and everything is just perfectly normal. That's what this was today.
Yeah, exactly right. Like it was just out of the blue and brutal and swift.
Just reading, I'm not going to name names of who was saying these things, but just like the words that were uttered after the Stephen Goff tweet got dropped in the channel was, holy crap, what the fuck, oh my god, oh my oh fuck, I don't know what to say, what.
And then you interestingly come in here and say, I mean, it's not that shocking, which I mean, to a point. I get what you're saying, but also I don't think any of us expected it while they were in god dang Bradenton or wherever they're at right now. It's Bradenton, right?
I mean, yeah, that comment from
Yeah.
me saying it wasn't that shocking was definitely me trying to feel better about the situation, like within the first seconds of finding out about it, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, well, good work. I think we continued to panic. And I
Yeah.
think everyone
Well, I
continued to
later went
panic.
on to say
This
he
is,
set himself on fire, and yeah.
of course, Elizabeth Holmes. Yeah, it's God, it was such a strange day because everything from there got worse somehow. Like as far as the general attitude about everything, and it was all just like gasoline being poured out and poured out and poured out, and then shaken a little bit to empty out the rest of the can. And then we'll get to it later. Someone decided to light a match, very uncharacteristically for this team, and just really double down on. I guess we could call it a cheat day, right? Like Atlanta took a big bite of something really bad for them and said, I guess one more thing won't hurt, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll get to that in a second, but we do gotta have to talk about Gressel, and we really probably won't get too much into exactly what this means because I think if we got too far ahead of ourselves, we would be short-sighted because this isn't it, right? Like as much as we're freaking out, this
Of
isn't
course,
it.
yeah.
That there's money still to be spent. There's spots to be filled. More is coming, so we don't know the full outlook for this team right now. But right now, if you started the season, seventh place looking ass team.
Yeah, it's not good. It's definitely not good. And something I want to talk about the phone call that Carlos Bocanegra had with media this afternoon to kind of talk about it.
Yeah.
It was, I don't want to say he sounded flustered. That might be too strong, but it was definitely Carlos sounding like he was reaching for the most milquetoast things he could possibly say about the situation. Lots of umming and hemming and hawing. Like it wasn't. He was kind of talking around a lot of things. It felt like to me. Now he did address some things head on. He said that he knows that the fans were going to hammer them for this. It was very clear that how bad of a PR hit this was for the team. Although I don't know if they actually took it as seriously as I think a lot of us were taking it. And it was just amazing to me to see some of the reaction online today of how distraught people were. And I'm not saying that in like kind of a condescending way. I mean like and I it was actually kind of heartwarming almost to kind of see how much of an impact one player could have over, you know, the whole fan base really. Like everybody was just distraught.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is a player that was so amazingly under the radar and then found a spot in this team where he's really been able to be successful and obviously, cared about the city, cared about the fans, and was thankful, I think, to be given a shot as a draft pick, knowing full well that these things don't normally work out, right? And it's going to be looked back on as one of the best draft classes for any team ever, really, in MLS,
Yeah.
just from the few years of Gressel we've gotten and the few years of Miles we're going to get and have had for the last little bit here anyway.
Yeah.
It's just so stunning. And then to, have things like he was, of course, very interactive with the fans. He was always out at events, very kind of focused on building a personal brand for himself in a very not a cynical way, and sometimes that can come across as cynical, and it rarely did with Julian, who seemed to really kind of enjoy being out there with the fans, even if sometimes they freaked him out a little bit and were a little too over the top.
Well, yeah, I think in that regard, I think that everybody kind of respected the hustle, and
which is Alfred
that's
as hell, but it's also legit.
and that's the kind of player he was on the field too. No, I mean like seriously, I think that people his entire time here, people knew that he was underpaid and that he had to kind of do these out of the box kind of things that you don't typically see from an athlete So anyway, all that's to say is that I think everybody kind of respected him a lot for that, and but I think not only did they respect him, that it grew a bond between the fans and the player himself. So it's just one of those things that you can't really recreate. You know, it's just one of those kind of special things that happened, and it's weird that it happened by the circumstance of Julian Gressel not getting paid nearly enough money as he should.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, I think it's something that will live with fans for a long time.
So on top of that, you got an excellent nickname that came up pretty organically that really kind of endeared him to folks and made him recognizable and stand out. And then, you have moments that showed he gave a shit, which can be very rare at times. If you're having to be a little too professional, I guess, and things like that. But to see someone really actually care about the fans and everything like that, and the one that everyone I think is going to come back to, and the one I think even maybe Julian mentioned today in his goodbye post, was a lasting memory that I have of him taking MLS Cup off of the stand after the ceremony or whatever you want to call it, and immediately running full speed over to the supporter section as everyone kind of lost their mind a little bit. And that's going to be a lasting thing from that. And to know that that player is gone and playing for a different team at this point that we're going to be able to see a few times a year, paired with another cult hero in Yamil Assad, it hurts, man. It sucks.
Yeah. I'm honest. I'm getting a little. It's getting a little dusty in here talking about him, taking the MLS Cup and running with it. He just really did have that connection with the fans, and that's what something I mentioned today was. I've said today felt like to me, and this isn't in tandem with the Leandro Gonzalez Perez sale. It feels like a piece of Atlanta United's soul is gone. It's felt like, they've, for lack of a better word, sold it. Sold, for money to rebuild the squad or whatever. But, those players, those two players, and I think Gressel especially, well, I don't even want to say it's him especially, but like both those players were here from day one, and they were the two most capped players on Atlanta United. And I think that because of that, the fans had an affinity for those two players, maybe that unlike anybody else.
Yeah, no, it's completely fair. It's completely fair. It's such a tough double whammy. We kind of already eulogized Leandro, of course, and talked a little bit how his play is somewhat diminished and lacked consistency last year. Gressel was real damn good though last year.
Yeah,
I think everyone kind of recognized that. I mean, he was forcing PT out of the lineup at times to an extent, and really kind of forcing tactical changes, as Josh Bagianski talked about in an excellent piece on DSS today. It's makes it even worse, right? You throw that on top of it. And all of it comes back to something we talked about, I think, for at least a second in the last show, is that all of this, all of the changes, all of the movement is in part, of course, to the salary cap and everything like that, but it's also due in part to Frank de Boer's so-called vision, right? Like what the idea for this team is going forward, right? And if it doesn't come off this year with the stalwart pieces of this club, and like you said, in part the soul of this club, if it doesn't turn into results this year, if it doesn't turn into soccer that is meaningful and enjoyable, then there's going to be serious questions to answer.
Yeah,
real serious questions to answer.
I just looking down at kind of like the worst case scenario, I could see a certain like calcification between the fan base and the support and the team itself and their performances, because they don't have as much of that connection now to the players. And even some of the players that are still around, like Miles Robinson, I absolutely love Miles Robinson. I think he's he comes from a great family, incredible human being, not the most charismatic, emotive though guy. He's not a guy that fans really connect with in that same kind of way. So I hope that things get off to a decent start on the field, just so that fans can kind of warm up to a lot of these players. And I would even say, Pitti is the same way, where it's like he's a great player, and I think a lot of people respect the ability that he shows when he plays the game, but he's also an introvert, and so he's not going to have that same kind of charisma and that same kind of connection. I want to ask you something, and you kind of started to bring this up, which is about Julian's play on the field. And this was something that I don't think Carlos ever kind of squared away in the call that we had, which was he was talking about how, we need to maximize our value, and we need to, obviously get better. We want to put the best team possible on the field as we can. And I know that the contract situation that Gressel was in meant that they had to kind of figure this out now. They couldn't let this linger through the season. That would have created a really tense and bad atmosphere between the club and the player. But I'm struggling to square the fact that you can actually be better without the guy who's had 35 assists in the last 3 seasons, and that's the 5th most in MLS over that period of time. I struggle to think that this somehow makes the team better. I guess, I think the team already has a lot of pieces in place that they can already be really good without a player like Julian Gressel, but I don't think they're necessarily going to be better than they could have been with him.
I'll add something to that 35 assist stat you threw out. Last year, according to Opta, Gressel was tied with Carlos Vela in big chances created. I'm not entirely sure what Opta's exact terminology is for big chances is, but from my understanding, it's going to be passes that lead to really high chance.
I think it's a pass that leads goals. To a chance that's of a certain XG threshold. I'm not sure what it would be, but we can all imagine what a big chance looks like.
Exactly, and he's tied with Carlos Vela for the league lead.
Yeah,
for the league lead.
Well, that was always Gressel's thing and it's funny because I've kind of debated with Rob Usry about this just privately, just discussing soccer, which I love to do with Rob. And Rob loves a tricky winger, a dribbler, that kind of a flair player. And I do too, of course. But I think Gressel, what he was so good at was he didn't really, because there was that element of flair and trickiness and one-on-one ability elsewhere in the squad, he was kind of the perfect opposite of that, where he didn't really have that as part of his game. But what was part of his game was to always be in really smart positions and provide really smart delivery to Joseph, like cutting the ball back in a really kind of clever way on the ground instead of just lumping in crosses, from that right side. Yeah. Personally, when I remember when Julian was basically, I wouldn't say breaking into the team, but he basically was not relinquishing his spot in the team in 2018 under Tata Martino. And I was kind of worried about the crossing situations. Like it's statistically, analytically, it's not a great way to produce chances, but you cannot deny like the stat that you just provided and how effective Gressel was at that, and just providing, he just gave the team something different from that side of the field. And to me, when Carlos was talking today, it struck me at how difficult I think that's going to be to replace. But who knows? Maybe Brooks Lennon can come in and do something very similar. But
God.
I mean,
God.
I should say I think Tito will be obviously the starter. He will be the one to dethrone if there's anybody to dethrone as like the right winger over there. But
which, I mean, is so interesting to me because Frank has shown such a lack of interest in playing Tito on so many occasions, right?
Yeah.
To now have that be the option, at least for now.
He was hampered by injury a lot last year, and it's I was thinking about this also today, which was toward the second half of last season, both Tito and Barco were almost completely absent from the team until the very, very end of the season. So maybe those guys can have a resurgence, and I'm certainly hoping to see Barco's best season too. But I don't want to distract too much from the conversation.
Sure, absolutely. Do you want to talk about, you mentioned too, of course, like the personalities on the team and everything like that. Looking at who's left from the starting lineup last year, I mean, you got You got Franco, regular season Franco. You got Brad. You maybe have Jeff in a regular starting role. Zeke, Pitti, and then Joseph. And it kind of seems like, as far as a personality standpoint, Joseph is going to have to carry the team on his back just about.
Yeah.
You know, as much as we get along with Jeff and is enjoyable as talking to Franco and everything like that.
I definitely would not categorize Jeff as a social butterfly.
No. No, he's always very gracious and very good in interviews, but he's got other things on his mind, like Halliburton stock. So it's going to be so interesting to see what this fan base does with this team. And last year, even with a couple of trophies, didn't seem as fun. And I know that sounds dumb, but
it was a grind. Last year was a grind.
And for our expectations to be even lower now is something, right?
Well, yeah. What's funny is that even in 2018, we think of it, and I can say we because I definitely have fallen into this trap, where you think back to 2018 and it is all sunshine and roses, baby. It was just goal scoring, it was just perfect, and it culminated in MLS Cup. And it wasn't until I went back and was doing a story about, I can't even remember what it was, but the next season, last year at some point, I was doing a story and I was looking back, I was going through some of my old tape from 2018, and going into the 2018 playoffs, all of the talk was about how this team needed to learn to win and couldn't win the big one and all this stuff because they lost in their first season. So it is funny how I think the success of the team actually does kind of change the way you think of it in retrospect. But I think certainly last year it was, those first couple months of the season, as much as people may want to forget them, I don't think anybody can forget how kind of brutal the play was that first part of the year.
Joe, did you say that Atlanta United lost in their first season?
Yeah, believe it or not.
Wow, what happened?
Penalties. They
Penalties.
Do you remember that? You remember everybody was giving Tata a bunch of shit for not having practice penalties in training and stuff. Everybody's very mad. Everyone was very mad.
I also remember everyone being very annoyed with who took the penalties, which is still very funny because they may have been totally right because Leandro and Jeff took and Jeff makes some sense, but Leandro being like the second person was also very funny.
I think Gressel take one. I want to say Gressel scored his.
I think Gressel made his. Yeah. I was in the supporters section that night. I blacked out a lot of it. I was, yeah. Back when I did such things.
Nice.
Before I got that fancy media pass and lived in a high tower for a couple of years here. But okay, so let's see. Gressel made his, and then Jeff hit the post. I remember. Leandro got saved. What did Columbus do, Joe?
I think, did they make every single one?
I think they just about did, but I wonder, anything stand out in particular from that last one?
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting.
One.
Okay, look.
There's only one Adam John.
God dang it. Yeah. So the reaction for the Slack that we talked about for the Gressel announcement, the pre-Jean announcement, because we knew this one was coming, was, in my opinion, even more visceral to an extent. But it was Walter White laughing in the crawl space, right? It was just, oh my God. Okay, if we don't know too, I do want to clarify. Adam John made the last penalty for Columbus in that game, and then proceeded to talk a lot of smack for not just that night, but on social media for a year and a half, essentially. Of course, Atlanta fans would always give him a little bit of stick, but not exactly a friendly relationship. He's coming from Phoenix Rising, did it very well in the USL last season, but it is USL, and he is a backup striker, I guess, if we're not considering Tito in that second spot now. To announce it today, of all days, was a choice.
It was definitely a choice. We talked a little bit about this before we started recording, and I think we may be of different opinion here. I don't care that much that they announced John today. What really gets me going is the whole fanfare that they put around it, especially like with the Darren Eales tweet. Love Darren Eales. Huge heart on that man, and he's a great president and steward of this club. But I just thought the tweet was a little much.
Yeah,
do we need to be teasing Adam John signing?
Of course, there's that whole thing too. Like, if you don't do it, are you saying he's lesser than? And I understand that Darren was in a tough position.
All strikers matter.
Yeah, and you don't want anyone to be completely miffed by that on the team. You have a bit going, and I know personally how hard it is to get away from bits that you think are good. And normally the bit is good. This one just seemed ill-fated from the very beginning. And frankly, I think the announcement itself was mistimed in a lot of ways. It really could have waited till tomorrow, y'all.
Yeah.
It just seemed so piling on, I guess, and piling on from things that were very much in Atlanta's control, and for a team that likes to control the message a lot and, be very brand centric and be very brand focused, it was strange to see them swinging this like this.
Yeah, I almost wonder if the John announcement, I don't think this is right, but I'm going to throw this out there. Like, if the John announcement was made today on the same day as Gressel, because they weren't that thrilled about it, and like they were like, okay, well, let's just get this one out of the way today too. But I don't think that's actually the case because of the whole way that they promoted it with the tweet and all that stuff. So just something I was thinking of. What was I going to ask you? I was going to ask you something, and now it's slipping my mind. It's been too much stuff has been happening today. Dang it. I can't remember.
Well, look, changes are here, and it's tough to deal with. And it's like going in to Costco and like finding out they've changed the aisles. And so now you have to go to aisle 7 to get your giant thing of 64 bags of like Fruit Loops, right? And that's going to be tough to deal with. And you may take a break from Costco for a little bit, but eventually you're going to come back and hopefully realize that it's still the same product. I think we're going to be fine. I know this sucks, and I know it feels like hot trash, but there's got to be good things coming, right? There's too much money. There's too much space available now for good things not to be coming.
I mean, people are definitely going to look at Brooks Lennon and be like, you're not Julian Gressel. Like it's like
he even does kind of look like a smaller version of
parents getting remarried or something. There's definitely going to have to be new bonds formed this year somehow between players and
look,
and
if you see Brooks Lennon out on the street, just walk up to him and ask him about last night's episode of Frasier. He will want to talk about it. Sure, it was a rerun, but he will want to talk about it.
I will say this year, I think that if we're talking about new, players, these new relationships that fans may establish with players, George Bello, I think, will be a big one. I think he could have a lot of fun with fans. I think fans will love to love on him as long as he's playing well. I think fans will love Fernando Meza once they kind of get more exposure to him. I've only been exposed to him for about 15 minutes for an interview, but he was awesome.
Yeah,
it's not the end of the world, it's just going to be new and different, and I think it's going to be very interesting for that reason. But it's definitely feeling like the new chapter, which I think was how they branded last year.
Right, and then we ended up going back to the same stuff that worked for the most part.
Yeah.
We're not going to be able to do that this time. It is going to be Frank's team.
Yeah.
Very much in a very real sense for the first time, and it's frightening to think what that might be.
Can I say something? I do want to say something about this as well, because this was a big talking point today, which was that what you just said, which was that this is Frank DeBoer's team now or whatever. And I do agree with that. I do think that this season will be a big referendum on his coaching ability and how well he's able to establish a coherent style of play with a group of players that are, you could reasonably say are his players now. His team definitely has his stamp on it. But I would also go a step further and say that this is almost more referendum on Carlos Bocanegra and how talented of a squad he's able to put together for Frank DeBoer this year, because Carlos Bocanegra has been with the team obviously since its founding, but when the club started, they had Paul McDonough in the front office,
Right.
who was he's like a cap wizard. And I think that he honestly got a lot of credit, and rightfully so, for helping build that first initial roster. And through that initial roster build, it set the team up for success for, a few years while these guys were still under contract. But obviously now what we're seeing is these contracts are expiring or coming towards the end. The team has to make a decision on whether to cut bait or extend them or whatever. And so I think that we're seeing that in action right now. And I think that for that reason, we'll also see kind of what this squad is made out of. And I think it's almost like Bocanegra is now no training wheels. He's
Right.
kind of on his own now, and we're going to see how good a job he's done.
On top of that, you have a direct comparison available because Paul McDonough went to Miami.
Yeah.
Miami's in the league, and if that first year Miami team, God forbid, does better than Atlanta this year, then there are going to be some real questions asked. On top of that, you have the headline of this article is Julian Gressel thanks Atlanta United supporters, from Doug Roberson, the AJC. But the lead quote from Gressel in it is, "I'm happy to go to a situation where I feel I'm really wanted."
Yeah.
And I think that is where some consternation comes from fans too, is to hear that, because the fans clearly wanted him, and Julian knows that and talks about that later. But that sounds like a culture issue. That sounds like a team issue. And for that to come up for a player that's so well liked, it puts the front office under even more of a microscope, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I totally understand where he's coming from. I think that's a kind of a direct shot at the front office, in that, he said he wanted to be a priority for this club at the end of last season after they got knocked out of MLS Cup playoffs. And then Carlos Bocanegra, on a phone call with media, said that Gressel was a priority. And I said this on Twitter today, right after that press conference that we had today with Bocanegra, which was that I don't think they really ever treated him like he was a priority. It sounded to me like what Carlos Bocanegra was saying happened was that, hey, we only have so much money to offer you, so, this is all we can offer, and, please take it. And Julian didn't take it, and rightfully so, because he got a lot more elsewhere. But if he was really a priority, that's not how you deal with a priority. If he was a priority, you make it happen. You move heaven and earth to make sure he's here. And I don't think, and somebody followed up with a good question saying, like, well, how do you evaluate his long-term prospects? Why did you, something along the lines of, like, how did you come to the decision where you decided he was not worth X amount of money? And Carl's basically shut it down, saying he's not going to answer that question. But, I think honestly, I thought it spoke volumes as to the fact that they thought he was worth a dollar amount, and he got,
which sometimes you have to do.
And that's why I'm glad he got his. I'm just glad he got his money. It's life-changing money for Gressel, like, to make, it sounds like $700K plus over 4 years. That's going to be like, what, 3 million or something? No.
Oh, definitely. And it's
Something like
almost
that.
7. It's almost 7 times what he was making. Like, he's not having to go get the sponsorship from Mercedes-Benz to get his car now. He can actually just go get the car.
Yeah. That's
I pulled up next to him at a stoplight one time. I didn't know whether to say hey or not. I'm not sure we were cool like that. So Oh man,
Well,
lots of change, lots of weird stuff. It's been a day. It's been
yeah,
a day.
it's been a day. It's gonna be an interesting season for sure.
Get at us. Let us know what you guys think about everything. We're always happy to engage in a dialogue, engage in the marketplace of ideas on Twitter.com. Shut up, Joe. And you can find Joe Patrick to engage him in the marketplace of ideas at JAPatrick200. You can find me at J_Sam Jones. Go follow DSS at Dirty South Sock. Go follow our Twitch. Go follow Instagram. Go follow all that nonsense. And of course, follow Five Stripe Final at Five Stripe Final. We'll be posting some stuff as we can and talking to y'all and having a chance to sort things out together, to grieve together, to understand where we are in this thing.
We'll get through this. There will be better times ahead. There will be signings. I'm hopeful, confident, hopeful.
Mm-hmm. Joe Patrick, we've still
be.
got hope, so I think we'll be fine. Let's get out of it.
All right, sounds good. Let's go sleep easy. See ya.